The official Vintage Guitar Magazine Price Guide has partnered with 33 of the top guitar dealers in the industry to provide the most accurate values for thousands of models. This includes electric guitars, acoustic guitars, basses, amplifiers, effects, mandolins, and banjos. Whether your instrument is an investment or simply a piece you enjoy playing, it's always helpful to know what it's worth. If you're checking out a guitar at your local shop and want to know its value before making the purchase, this guide is your go-to source for all the details. Available in both print and digital editions, you can have the guide right at your fingertips no matter where you go.
Hello and welcome to Buy That Guitar, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine. I'm your host, Ram Tuli. This podcast is about the joy of guitar. That includes buying guitars, selling guitars, collecting guitars. We're talking vintage guitars, new guitars, used guitars, pre-war, flat tops, electric Spanish arch tops, custom shop guitars, limited edition guitars, basses, amps, effect pedals, lap steels, mandolins, banjo. If it has strings, we're going to talk about it. I spent most of my life studying the vintage guitar market. It's truly something I love and I'm passionate about. I can talk guitars all day, and I'm going to. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another thrilling and exciting edition of Buy That Guitar. Today, I'm with Freeman Arthur. He's the American musician and social media celebrity known for his mastery of the pedal steel guitar. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, raised in Ripley, a small town about 50 miles north, Arthur developed a deep love for country music from the early age when his father introduced him such legends as George Jones, Hank Williams, and Conway Twitty. At 9, he began playing piano, later developing into a slit note style to emulate the pedal steel guitar sound, which paved the way for his eventual focus on the instrument. And now he is famous as you can be as a pedal steel player. How you doing, Freeman?
I guess so. For some reason, I guess that is true. I'm very grateful for that. But it is crazy, the power of social media and what it has been able to do for so many people, and myself included. But it's always amazing to me just to hear from people who will tell me, hey, I watch your videos from, Australia or the UK or all over the country and all over the world. And it's just, you would never be able to have done that 50 years ago. I guess so. For some reason, I guess that is true.
So I'm just sitting there on my couch, minding my own business. I'm stuck in my iPhone loops, my wife just looking at me. And all of a sudden, your videos start entering my feeds. And I'm like, wow. And because I watched them all the way through, naturally, however they set you up, now I get your feeds like 5, 6 a day. I'm like, wow. Now, I read that you have over 700 million views right now.
Yeah, if you added everything up that I've ever done across all the platforms, that's probably pretty close. It's somewhere around in there.
Yeah, that's like cats playing piano type territory. Right?
I know. That was such a big one. I remember that. I think I was in middle school when those videos were big.
Yeah. Now, we talked a little bit earlier, and I was like, I've always just loved the pedal steel. To me, there's nothing more beautiful sounding. And I remember, like, you were even telling me, like, sometimes people walk up to you and they're like wondering, what the heck are you doing? What are you doing sitting there at a table with whatever? Like, I think there's a misconception of what a pedal steel really is, right?
Yeah, I mean, so for most people who don't understand or think about it, the pedal steel, obviously it derived from the lap steel originally, which came out of Hawaii. And in a basic, very simple concept of it, the pedals just allow you to change the pitch of the strings. And a lot of people think that the pedal steel is so intimidating because you have all the pedals and knee levers and things like that. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think it's easier than the lap steel because it's almost, for me, it's like cheating. I mean, you've got all these pedals and knee levers at your disposal to make all these different chords that you want. And you don't have to worry as much about doing bar slants and things like that like you do with the lap steel. Of course, you can do bar slants on a pedal steel, right, but it's not as required, and so I think the visibility of the instrument has always been kind of in the back seat. I mean, most people, if you listen to classic country music and traditional country music, you pretty much recognize the sound of a pedal steel guitar. But I hear so many people talk about, I've never seen one before. Like, I've never seen one in person until I started watching your videos. So it's just kind of fascinating.
Right. In fact, when we were talking earlier, I was telling you, like, I learned to play the guitar in the Navy by watching all the Philippine bands. Like when I was, my ship would pull into Subic Bay, and there was a street called Magsaysay, and every club was a bar that had a band that played. And most of my buds, we all hung out in a place called the Sierra Supper Club, which was heavy metal rock. You had Ted Nugent, ZZ Top, Black Sabbath type songs. And then right across the street was this place called the Red River. And I remember just walking by, and I hear this guy in there, I think they were playing Kalijah or something, and I just poked my head in there because it was the most beautiful. I'm like, holy cow, somebody's got a real pedal steel in there. And I ran in there, and it's just some guy got like a lawsuit era Les Paul Reborn or something, and he's using a volume pedal, and he's just bending notes and doing double stops. So that's how I learned how to do most of my pedal steel licks, was with the volume pedal and just doing, double stops and moving up and down the fretboard, as smoothly as I could. But I've always dreamed about playing real pedal steel, And tell me, like, if you're in a gig and you show up, like, how bad is the setup? Like, when you show up, do you have to get there like 2 hours early?
Well, the more and more that you do it, the faster you get at it. For me now, I mean, breaking down the instrument and putting it together and things like that, I can probably put one together in just a few minutes.
Wow.
Honestly, the hardest part is just lugging in all of your equipment. The newer steel guitars, some of the newer ones that I play are a lot lighter. Now, the old Showbuds and Emmons and those steel guitars, especially if you have a double neck, they are extremely heavy. I mean, I just turned 30 this year, and I actually had hernia surgery right as I turned 30 years old, probably because I was carrying my Showbud somewhere and probably wasn't using great form doing it. But yeah, I mean, setting it up and whatnot, it's not too terribly bad whenever you get the hang of it. But I do get questions and emails from people that will buy one, and they'll just go, I have no idea. I don't even know how to put it together. Because, I mean, the legs come off, the pedal bar comes off, the rods come off of it. But, like I said, once you get used to it, it's not too bad.
So obviously you're going to have to tune it up, when you're doing the sound check.
So the way that works, so you've got, on the E9 pedal steel guitar, which is what I play, and most commercial country music that you hear is the E9 tuning. Now, you will have a few, hit songs like George Strait, All My Exes Live in Texas. A lot of that Western swing stuff was actually done on the C6 tuning. But for, either one of those tunings, you've got your 10 strings and you tune those up. And then if you look over on the right-hand side of the guitar, there's like these little nylon pegs, and you get like a little tuning wrench. There's like a specialized tuning. It almost looks like a drum key if you've ever seen like what drummers use to tune their snare drums. And you basically are tuning those pedals and knee levers to a precise, amount. And there's all different kinds of, like, there are rabbit holes you can go on pedal steel guitar tunings, because it's the instrument is temper tuned as well. So it's like, it's not just always tuned straight up to 440 in every case. And so companies like Peterson have come out and made really good tuners like the Strobo Stomp HD that have like pedal steel guitar presets in them. And that helps a lot of people out with how to tune your pedals and knee levers correctly. But if you're going to ask, some of the big longtime pros who've been playing for, 50 years, most all of them tune by ear.
Wow. So you tune the actual to the chord, right? The 10 strings to the chord.
Yeah. So the 10 string tuning, so it's an open E chord. And then you have basically, like, if I'm going to talk in intervals here, your top two strings, you have a ninth interval and then you have a seventh interval. And then lower down in the tuning, you have another ninth, which some people think of as your second interval, if that's, if you're understanding music. And then you also have a dominant seventh in the tuning, which is your ninth string. So essentially, but when you're just starting out basic, in order not to confuse anybody, it's essentially like 4 different inversions of an E chord. And so you go up and down, you play your 4 different groups, and that's your open E chord. And so, if you start there and you've got those strings in tune, you start kind of tinkering with your pedals and knee levers and start, adjusting how far do you want to bend the string from kind of that starting point. And every pedal steel player is going to have their own, kind of way that they tune the instrument. Some of them will just start by tuning their E's because that's your root note. And then they'll kind of, maybe they'll tune their thirds and they'll kind of balance it against those two. If you talk to 10 different steel players about how they tune their steel and what process they go in, you're probably going to get 10 different answers.
Yeah, I know it's hard enough to tune up just a regular 6-string guitar. And, I couldn't imagine if I had to detune for this setting and then up tune for that setting. I could just imagine after the sound check and then you start playing, you realize something's wrong.
Yes.
What do you do? Yeah, something's wrong. What do I do?
Yeah. And that's why if you ever watch any of my videos or you see me play live, I actually have this little mic stand that I clip onto the side of my steel. So my tuner is always right there in case something like that ever happens. But a lot of pedal steels, especially the good quality ones, once you get those pedals and knee levers in tune, they usually stay pretty well in tune unless you have some type of mechanical issue with it. But at least it gets you through a whole show usually. I mean, you might have to make a small adjustment here and there, just like you would on a regular guitar. But it's just the process of getting there. Like changing strings. Oh, it's very challenging if you have to change strings right before a show or something like that. Because just like regular guitar strings, they stretch. And they also stretch when you're pressing the pedals and knee levers. So it's a nightmare if you're trying to do it right before you're going to play.
Yeah. You think restringing that Rickenbacker 12 string is a pain in the ass? try doing an Emmons double neck.
Yeah, exactly.
So you actually you work with Growler steel guitars, right? And they have a model named after you, don't they?
Yeah, I feel pretty honored and not worthy to have something like that this early on in my career. But yeah, they're a company out of North Carolina, in Oakboro, which is just a little bit outside of Charlotte. It's a husband and wife duo. So the guy's name is Kelly and his wife is Susie, and they have a whole shop there at his house where he builds these pedal steels. And they reached out to me. I think maybe it's probably been a little bit over a year ago. And basically their goal of what they've wanted to do is they're trying to help the resurgence of the pedal steel, and they're trying to make them as affordable as you possibly can. I mean, because pedal steels are not cheap. And that's one of the biggest barriers when you talk to people that say, man, I really would love to play pedal steel, but I just can't afford to refinance and mortgage my entire being in order to get one. And so they do a really good job of making good quality stuff. A lot of it is very lightweight as well. I mean, the Growler that I have is significantly lighter than my old Showbud that I have. Now, the thing is all of these classic brands, and it's probably the same way with guitars. Fender is such a reputable brand for electric guitar and whatnot. And so anybody who can get their hands on a Showbud or an old Emmons or something, you're always going to, have a little bit of a bias towards it just because it's been around longer. But what they're doing in the short time that they've been in business and have done what they've done has been very impressive to me, because they're very much just really trying to keep country music, the traditional side of it, alive. And I think that with me playing their instruments, and it's getting more people interested in wanting to learn how to play. And that's always been kind of an interesting thing with some pedal steel players. It's almost like for the past 30, 40 years that pedal steel has kind of been this mystified instrument that nobody really wants to share or talk about. And, I've heard people talk to some of these older steel players that are like, if you don't start teaching the younger generation how to do this, it's going to die with you. And, I don't think anybody wants that to happen. And so I think they've done a good job of trying to make it, I don't want to say it's dirt cheap, but it's relatively more affordable to buy a Growler than it would be to buy a brand new Emmons.
Right. You're using a Growler on your videos, right?
Yeah, the GSG guitars, the red one and the blue one that I usually play, those are Growlers.
Yeah.
And then the only other steel that I do have is the very first one I ever have, which I have a lot of personal bias towards because it was my first one and it was a gift, which is the 1970 Showbud that I have.
So if somebody did want to get in, just start playing, the Freeman model would be a great one to start with. And how much would that cost them, do you think?
I think if you got my model, I'd have to go back and check, but I think it's my model, the Pro Elite one that they've got out there, is a little bit under $4,000, but they do start out with models that are around $1,200.
Wow.
So, I mean, and $1,200 for a brand new instrument, and they've got a lifetime warranty on it, it's just considerably cheaper than if you were going to go out and buy, some of the brand new Emmons out there are $10,000. now, they're fantastic. Like, I'm not knocking. I've never played a bad brand of steel guitar. I mean, I really haven't. Everybody out, I think that the instrument costs too much to make for it to be, a bad instrument. It's not like the guitars you can buy in a box. You can go to Walmart and buy a first act guitar, and everybody's like, well, yeah, it's a terrible guitar, but it costs $50,
right.
Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, I think, to make a bad one. But yeah, like I said, I think they start out, some of them are around 1,200, and they even make 6-string models that might even be, a little bit cheaper than that. I'd have to go back and look at their pricing sheet, but it's still significantly cheaper than going with another brand.
Right. Now, these days, you're pretty busy, and you're working with a lot of big names now.
Yeah, thanks to the power of social media, I've gotten, I think pretty much everything I've ever done with steel guitar has always come because somebody has come across my videos and have reached out to me, and it's been good. So, I've worked recently with a few country acts, and one of the most surprising things that I've gotten to do is I've taken the pedal steel guitar into regional Mexican music, which is a genre that the pedal steel is almost never heard of in. And I actually just celebrated in July my second Billboard #1 that I played pedal steel on in that genre for the group Intocable. And and that's the thing, for those people who don't speak Spanish, there's a lot of these groups out there that if you're just English speaking, you have no idea who they are. And most of these artists that I've worked with in that genre specifically, I had no idea who they were until they approached me about wanting to play something. But they're pretty well-known artists in those genres and have helped me a lot in that area. So I've been very fortunate and blessed to get to do some of that and work in that genre. And then, a few up and coming and notable country acts here and there that I, get to hang out with and play with as well.
Mm-hmm. I think you mentioned Thompson Square.
Yeah, so in later on this month, so Shauna Thompson, who is the female in that duo, she has kind of stepped out now and is doing her own solo project, and we're actually going down to Muscle Shoals, I think to Fame Studios down there, and are going to do like a little TV spot down there, and so I'm going to go and play some old, classic sounding pedal steel guitar with her, and again, and that was just one of those things of I'm sitting at home one day and I get an Instagram message from Thompson Square that's like, hey, we really like your playing, we love your videos, would love to have you come out and play with us. And so, it's just been my whole, little advertising system.
Right. And I should also point out, you can take online courses. If you want to really play pedal steel, you could take, you have like a course, online course.
I do. And that kind of came about whenever I started working with Growler in North Carolina, because I started getting calls from them and they said, Freeman, we're selling all these steel guitars now, but nobody knows how to play. Like they've got it, but there's not a dedicated course for them out there. And I was very hesitant to put that together because there are other pedal steel players who have courses out there. And Paul Franklin, probably the greatest steel guitar player in the world, has a course. And so my philosophy was always, I don't know why anybody would want to learn from me when you could go learn from who I consider to be the best. But I just had people, I think that there's something to be said about the social media connection that I've been able to form with some of these individuals, and they feel like they personally know me in a sense. And so it's like, well, I don't want to learn from that guy. I want to learn from Freeman. And so I finally just threw my hands up and said, okay, well, I'll make a course. And so it's been going really well. I've been doing it for about a year. I think I'm up to about, I think 160 beginner lessons now. And so I try to cover everything about the basics of getting people started. And then I've also got a little song tutorial course where I'll kind of go in and break down some of those solos that everybody wants to learn. When you play pedal steel, everybody wants to learn the Rainy Day Woman from Waylon Jennings and all those favorite solos. So I kind of just try to break those down in that course as well.
You live in Nashville, or just outside Nashville now, right?
Yeah, just outside of Nashville. I've been here. This is a 10-year anniversary, so I finally made it to the 10-year town.
Yeah. We were talking the other day, and I was like, I love Nashville because my son stationed down there in Fort Campbell. And so, my wife and I, that was our great excuse to go to see him, was to go to Nashville. But that town is really changing now, isn't it?
It's changed even so much in the time that I have been there. I mean, I remember in the way that I measured Nashville's growth and change is that when I moved to Nashville in 2015, which really, doesn't seem like that long ago, but you could drive around all of downtown and you could always spot the Batman building, which is the big AT&T, most famous looking building in Nashville. Nashville downtown in the skyline. You could see it from pretty much no matter where you drove, north, south, east, or west, you could see it. And now there's just so many buildings and things that have grown up around it. Nashville is just flooded with people. And it's very rare almost to find anybody in Nashville who's actually from here. Everybody seems to have moved here from somewhere else. So it's very different.
Yeah, I remember like when we first started going there and my son first got stationed down in Fort Campbell, we were like, we loved it. It was just great music, everything. But maybe the last 2 or 3 times it was bridesmaid, drunks everywhere, and, just not like it used to be,
Yeah, and if you talk to people who can talk to you about Nashville back in the 80s and 90s, Nashville, as they say, almost used to be like this little getaway town where you could just kind of go and relax for the weekend. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Broadway now is closer to like Bourbon Street in New Orleans. I mean, it is very, it is full of bachelorettes and it is full of a lot of drunk people, which I don't see how, because the price of drinks in Nashville now is like $20 for a drink. So I don't know how people afford to get drunk anymore. But I pretty much stay out of Broadway unless we go down for a hockey game or something like that. But it definitely is. It's not family friendly like it might have used to have been during the day.
Yeah. It's, you don't know what you're going to run into or. Yeah. The other day we were talking about the George Jones Museum, and what a shame it's gone now. After that explosion. But my wife and I were talking about the George Jones Museum. Like we used to eat there at the top, and then we go down there, always went in there. And it was just just the things that were in that George Jones Museum. I remember the note that he left on the card that he just parked in front of the loading zone at the airport. He just left a note saying, this is George Jones. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I got to go.
And there are tons of crazy George Jones stories like that all over town.
Yeah, and he came back after his flight. He came back 3 days later. The car was still there. And it was still running. It didn't even get turned off. So I don't know. It's just, to me, But one thing that, from your videos, you are a true historian when it comes to like country music. You know your country music history. And being a pedal steel guitar player, I guess you kind of have to, right? Because this is like the lifeblood kind of that pump through both.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you have to appreciate from being a pedal steel guitar player, and my love for country music, was born primarily, like I said, from my father who introduced me to a lot of that stuff. But they used to take me to the Opry a lot in Nashville, and so the first job I ever got whenever I came here is I was a tour guide at the Grand Ole Opry, and I loved the Opry so much. And I was actually going to college at Belmont here in Nashville, and I still lived in Ripley over the summer when I wasn't allowed to stay in my dorm. And so I actually kept my job at the Opry because I loved it so much. So over the summer, I would drive 3 hours to Nashville and then 3 hours back home, just because I loved it so much and just loved being around the history of it, and eventually worked my way through and was able to work at the radio station over there at WSM, and some of the legendary DJs like Eddie Stubbs and people like that I got to work around really also helped educate me a lot on some of that stuff, because I never consider myself to be as great of a historian as people like Eddie Stubbs, who people around Nashville would say is the encyclopedia of country music, because he could just tell you everything about everything that has ever happened in Nashville. But I think a lot of that really helped me and gained my appreciation of not just studying the music that I grew up on, not just 90s and early 2000s country, but digging back into the early days of, even if you go all the way back to the Bristol sessions, whenever country music was born in Bristol, Tennessee, with, all those things with the Carter family and then Roy Acuff coming through. And I just found that stuff so fascinating, just how we got, the Opry just celebrated, or this is their 100th anniversary, because the Opry started in 1925. And so just all of that history has just always intrigued me.
Right, the longest radio program. Now, how would you compare today's country to the music that our parents listened to?
See, Nashville, and I heard it described one way once, that country music has kind of always been a pendulum, where it'll swing more pop and then it'll kind of come back and it'll swing a little country. And at least that was true for most decades, if you kind of can study it through. And then for the last, I would say 15 years, I really don't know what in the world is going on here. Because, you don't
Mm-hmm.
hear, and this is what a lot of people say whenever, people who love classic country, you don't hear a lot of the elements that distinguished country music as being country today as you did maybe even 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago, 40 years ago, things like that.
Well, it's the storytelling, there's I don't really hear much storytelling anymore,
Right.
you
And
know,
and I've heard
and
I've
there's
I've heard it said before from people that they don't like old country music because they say, well, every song's the exact same. And I always will kind of shoot back at that because there are so many classic country songs that hit on themes that are so, you know, I don't want to say they're totally unique, but I mean there are so many songs that are about specific life things and telling stories about what feel like real people, whether they were or not. And the source material for music today is pretty limited.
right. Well, you think about songs about heartbreak, rural life, working class struggles. The people that were singing those songs in 1950 were actually living through heart. I mean, when Hank Williams is writing, singing about that pain and suffering, he's pain. He's got pain and suffering. There's
Exactly.
when there's working class struggles. I mean, you really were a coal miner's daughter. I think that the old country was just so unpolished, authentic. It was tied to like the regional traditions. I mean, I don't want to ever say that today's country isn't like country, but I mean, to me, it's like it's missing something.
Yeah, I mean, Nashville definitely has a system as to how they turn out songs, and a lot of people call that being cookie cutter, and that's, a fair assessment because you do have, writers in town and publishing companies in town, and you might see even up to five people on one song writing, and it's like they all get in a room together and they go, well, this is the kind of song we need today, so what can we kind of throw together? And
Hmm.
and if you talk to some of these songwriters in town, and some of them are having commercial success writing country music that's out on the radio now, but a lot of them go, man, I really wish that I could write music that would be something that, George Strait would have cut in the 1980s. But if I try to write that stuff, nobody's going to push it.
Right.
And so it's interesting just to hear that perspective of like there are people working in Nashville who really wish they were doing more traditional sounding country music, but they just feel like their hands are tied. And there's that side of it, like, well, I got to pay the bills, and
Yeah.
so this is what they're paying me to write.
Yeah.
So I guess this is what I'm going to write.
I think you hit it on the nose when you said, country music is like a pendulum. It swings this way and then it swings that way. You had like that a resurgence of the Bakersfield type thing. Dwight Yoakam comes back, and you get back into that kind of a Telecaster drive. I would do anything to somebody to come in and just go back to the old formula of unfiltered authenticity, right? Just something that talked about real life struggles and stuff. But you're right. You gotta get the song on the radio. You gotta do this. You gotta write about girls.
Yeah. I'm definitely one of those people though that I harken back to a lot of the classic stuff. And for me, lyrically and melodically, I love a lot of that stuff. But just the instrumentation in country music now is just, I mean, almost non-existent. I mean, you can play 10 songs back to back to back in a row, and they all basically sound just like it's almost like there's just this wall of sound, but you can't really pick apart anything. It's like there's layered guitar tracks. You can't really hear if there's piano on the track. You can't really hear if there's a fiddle. You barely could pick out if there's a steel guitar. It's just kind of washed all together. And I think that in the decades past, I mean, you like you listen to even some of the stuff in the 90s from Alan Jackson, and you can clearly distinctively pick out, okay, the fiddle's going to take the first verse, and then we'll let the steel do the ride in the chorus, and then when we come back we'll do the piano in the second verse.
Hmm.
And it was just like this really cool 7-piece band that would all kind of cohesively work together. And now like I said, it's just I can't separate anything.
Hmm.
And you do have artists that are coming out, like Zach Top is really big right now, and Cody Johnson has been big for a while, and even guys like Jake Worthington and whatnot that are gaining some traction doing a lot of that more Texas country style of music. And so it's definitely still there. And that's one thing you'll hear from traditional country fans is that, traditional country music is still out there. It just might not be on the radio. You might not see it at the CMA Awards, but it's still out there. These guys just might not be getting as much recognition as you would think they deserve.
Right. I do agree there's a resurgence for pedal steel. Like you didn't hear pedal steel for a long time. And now I hear more and more of it. But like you were saying, you hear it in different kinds of music as well. The Robert Randolph. And
Right.
so let's talk about the pedal steel and how it came to be. Because this is a truly American innovation. When you talk about the brief overview of the pedal steel, lap steel, everything starts in Hawaii, right? With the invention of what they call the lap steel. That's attributed to Joseph Kaku.
I think that's correct.
Kukuku, yeah. 1880s, he basically starts playing a bar against an open tune guitar. He's one of the first guys. Well, a lot of the old guys yeah, I guess he's the first guy accredited with actually open tuning a guitar and using a steel bar or a slide or a knife.
Yeah, I think I've heard some variations of like maybe he used a bolt or a comb or a knife or something at first, just experimenting with it and kind of like the sound of it at first. And you know, who knows how much of that is rooted in myth versus fact. But yeah, he's pretty much I think attributed with being the first person to ever put some type of mechanism on the strings.
Right. And Hawaiian style music, it was kind of a wailing, kind of, like a moaning. It kind of like it's really supplemented the singing style. And it was kind of a wail, like that wailing, crying type of sound. It was a very unique sound, but it caught on. It was huge after World War One.
Yep.
I think we did a show way back, and it talked about Hawaiian music was the biggest seller in 1918. Everybody wanted to love the Hawaiian music. There was a big craze, like when we talk about these resonator guitars that became
Right.
famous with the rural bluesmen. That was really designed for the Hawaiian music craze. All the very first electric guitars are basically being made to be lap steels. The very first electric guitars were lap steels.
Oh yeah.
And I think the most famous one is 1931. We see the Rickenbacker frying pan that shows up. And that one, people don't realize that was the very first electric guitar. It was actually a lap steel.
Oh yeah.
And is made out of all metal. So when you're underneath the stage lights, guess what happens? That thing got out of tune right away.
Right.
Yep. And so that they migrated into that bake light was supposed to be, so it wouldn't go out of tune, but it was also about 30 pounds. That thing was heavy. And you get, Soul Hoppy and those early manufacturers were making these things. So the pre-pedal innovations we think about is that lap steel. And it's just a fixed tuning. You're very limited, aren't you? You basically tune it to open whatever, and you're stuck there,
Yeah, I think a lot of them now are some type of six tuning. I think maybe I've heard like an A6 tuning, or maybe even some of them a C6 in times. And it's interesting for me because I have never owned a lap steel myself. Like I've picked them up and messed around with them. And a lot of people just assume, well, you can play pedal steel, so you should easily be able to play lap steel. And I'm not saying that if I, sat down with one for quite a while, I wouldn't figure it out. But it's just a totally different concept as to how you approach the instrument because the tuning is different than the E9 and things like that. And it's like I said, you're talking about right there is kind of hinting as to what I said earlier. You were very limited on the lap steel as to what chords you could move to and how freely you were able to move to. So whenever they started adding the pedals to it,
right,
it just made it easier. I mean, it's like I said, it's almost like using the old auto harp where you just, press down a button and strum it and there's your chord.
Yeah. And it plays a chord. Alvito Ray, I guess, isn't he credited with putting the first pedal mechanisms on a lap steel type table?
I think that's what I read, and that was like what in the early or mid 30s or something like that.
Yeah, he had a lever, like knee levers. I think that's where he came in.
Right.
But everything changes in 1954 because Bud Isaacs, he's on that Webb Pierce song playing slowly, and that's the breakout moment, right, for pedal steel.
Yeah, that was the first commercially hit record. And sometimes you got to be careful with that because people will point out they think that there might have been other songs before then that were recorded with pedal steel, but they weren't as popular. But that is always attributed as like being the song that everybody first hears, the perfect blend of a chord. And so for my understanding, if my understanding is right, he had one pedal that basically did what we now know as the A and B pedal. And so later, and we can talk about this later, they actually split the pedals in that one pedal. They actually split it into two different pedals. But he had this one pedal that would perfectly basically take you from a one chord, to a four chord is basically kind of what it would do. And so he played that perfect blend and then split it up the fret and kind of played it again. And it was so much different than all of the stuff people had heard before from, lap steel was used in country music beforehand with things, everything Hank Williams Sr. recorded on. The pedal steel wasn't really a part of that. It was all like stand up lap steel from people like Don Helms who played on that stuff. So, I mean, the lap steel was still in country music pre 1950s ish until once Bud Isaacs came out with that recording. It was almost like just a game changer. Everybody was running, to their closet to get
right,
coat hangers and anything they could find to make mechanisms for pedals. Yeah.
Now, one thing I remember way back, like in the 1990s, Guitar Player magazine had put out a CD. It was called, the Essential Guitar. That's what it was. Legends of Country Guitar. On the country version, they had a volume 2, and I remember on that volume 2 was a song called "Stealin' the Blues" with Jerry Byrd, and that blew my mind. Like that was like I was like, wow. I remember just that whole Jerry Byrd "Stealin' the Blues." I think Rex Allen was the guy singing with a deep voice, got me in a whole lot of trouble, stealing the blues. Remember that song? And to me, that was like, damn. So that was like 1948, 49-ish. So yeah, the steel was pretty big. And you think about Leo Fender bringing his little lap steels, K&F. I mean, that's basically what they were doing. But man, all of a sudden you get this slowly, everything changes. Now, we didn't really talk about it. Let's talk about it now. Tell me what the mechanisms are on a pedal steel.
So, traditionally, what we have come to, I guess, adapt is like the common setup. Now I'll preface by saying that every pedal steel player almost has their own setup in a way. And that's one of the things that makes the pedal steel so unique. There are pedal steels that you could walk into and sit down and they could be set up differently and you might have trouble playing it at first, which is so unlike sitting down at a piano or maybe grabbing a regular guitar off the wall. But typically you would have, 3 pedals and 4 knee levers if you're playing E9. Like if you've got a double neck, if you've got the E9 neck on top and the C6 neck, you'll have some more pedals and some more knee levers that will control those 2 different necks. But essentially, if I can try to get into the music theory without boring anyone to death, the pedal steel is essentially tuned to an open E chord. So your bar almost acts just like a capo would on a regular guitar. So if you put your bar at the first fret and you put no pedals, no knee levers, that would be an F chord. You go to the second fret, now you're at F sharp, third fret G, and so on and so forth. And so, and just for simplicity's sake, if you're taking a C chord and the notes in the C chord are C, E, and G. So your first 2 pedals, which are the ones that you most commonly hear, the B pedal, as we call it, is going to raise your E note up a half a tone to an F. And then your A pedal is going to raise your G note up a whole tone to an A. So just by using those 2 pedals, if I was playing, at the 8th fret, which would be an open C chord, if I play any of those groups and push down those 2 pedals, it will automatically transform that chord from a C chord to an F chord. Mm-hmm. And that's like the first basic understanding of like, hey, this is what the pedals do. And that was the early thing that Bud Isaacs did. Those 2 pedals were one pedal combined, and then later they split them into 2 different ones. So that's like the first, little essential part of it. And then you have the C pedal, which will let you play. It'll basically raise your 5th string, which is your 5th interval as well, a whole tone. And then it's also going to raise your 4th string up a whole tone as well. And that'll allow you to play those really cool minor chords. So the easiest way I can think about that is like if you listen to some of that old Bakersfield sound that was just very almost like punchy type stuff in your face. A lot of that, that was all kind of on that B and C pedal combination. And then your levers, you can have so many different combinations there, but essentially the foundation of your levers is that you have one knee lever that's going to lower your root note, which would be your open E strings. It's going to lower your E's a half a tone. And then you have another knee lever that's going to raise your E's a half a tone as well. And so with those variations, if you just lower your root note, you can instantly get a minor chord by doing that. And then if you raise your E's while using your A pedal, you can get a different type of major chord. Mm-hmm. So again, a lot of that may go over so many people's heads, but essentially just know that like you can sit on one fret, and if you know what you're doing with all the different pedal and knee lever combinations, you can play pretty much any major or minor chord that's out there.
Right there, without moving too far up or down.
Yeah, I mean, you can get, even if you want to get crazy, some people do like half pedals where they only push the A pedal down halfway instead of a whole. There are ways that you could technically, theoretically, play almost everything on a single fret. You just wouldn't do it on like, regular recording because it wouldn't flow as nicely.
Well, you're missing the whole point. Now, like one of the things I don't get is this whole, they talk about this Nashville sound is the E9 and C6, where you use the E9 for the melody and the C6 for fills. What exactly does that mean?
So, I guess essentially with the E9, you would hear that more in like a lot of your commercial style of music that you hear today. And the C6 is more or less your older stuff. And the C6 neck is one that I've dabbled in a little bit, and I don't have a C6 that I use primarily. Mm-hmm. But the C6, you have bass notes that can go a lot lower than you typically would get on a regular E9. So a lot of people do like to kind of switch over to that and play some of those low fills and low pads with their C6. And obviously I've seen people play the E9 neck, and it can sound just like a C6. And one easy trick you can do is you can just keep your E's lowered the whole time, and you can slide your bar around and play different patterns, and it sounds like you're playing a C6, even though you're really not. And then, with the same thing with the C6 neck, there are certain things, if you know what style you're trying to play, that you can make it sound like an E9 as well.
Mm-hmm. We're going to try to sell people on learning how to play pedal steel. So let's just say it's super, super easy, people. It's like, you just go this way, or that way. And then you got this, you could, instead of like going 5 frets to get to your 4, you could just lower your, do this and that. So to me, it's like, just think all the fun you could have just experimenting with this thing,
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And I tell people, because I play a little bit of rhythm guitar. I would never even tell anybody that I play guitar for any type of professional standard. I know how to play a G chord and a C chord and a D chord and a few little bar chords here and there. But for me, the hard part for me with playing guitar is the fact that you have to know all of these different shapes mm-hmm. and all these different fingerings in order to play your chords. But the cool thing about pedal steel is that once you learn how to play a lick somewhere, all you got to do is move your bar somewhere else, and you can play that exact same lick in a different key.
Right.
Like, it's so funny when people come to me mm-hmm. and they'll be like, "Hey, we're actually going to do this song in the key of F sharp instead of F. Is that going to mess you up?" And I'm like, "No. All I have to do is slide my bar up 1 fret." Mm-hmm.
The pedal steel that was used on Slowly. Now that was made by Paul Bigsby.
Yes.
And that I've always had this. I want to write a book about the guitar wars, the Bigsby Leo Fender guitar wars, because anything that Paul Bigsby did, whatever he came up with, Leo Fender the next year would outdo him and make it marketable. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
So here you got Paul Bigsby comes up with this great innovation. I don't know if the one they used was a double neck, and Buzz Isaac uses it. And then the next year, what do you got? Leo Fender comes out with the 400, right?
Yeah, and I think that Fender guitar, when people talk about the early days of pedal steel, a lot of them will associate either that Fender. You might get some people that talk about like the Gibson mm-hmm. electro harp or whatnot that they kind of had. But I mean, you can see some of those old Fenders and even some of the old lap steels that they had that had like 3 or 4 different necks on them that had that, that cream color to them that I've seen. And But yeah, I mean, I've seen quite a few of those early Fenders. Sometimes they'll pop up on Reverb from people.
Now, I was told that they were clunky and they had really poor cable systems that went out of tune pretty easily. Is that
I mean,
true?
that would seem about right. I've never sat behind one of the old Fenders and played it, but I do know that one of the hardest parts of the pedal steel early on was getting it to stay in tune because you would have, and that can happen if some of your mechanisms wear out. Even on my show bud, which is, probably it was built in the 70s, so however old that instrument is now, after I've used a pedal so much, if I haven't had the instrument service in a while, the mechanisms will loosen, and so it can go out of tune pretty quickly. So maybe it could have been a case in those early days where it's like, all right, you're good for about 8 to 10 pedal presses, and after that we got to retune it.
Yeah, the cables were notorious for just getting slanky or loose. But to me, I was like, I always thought of like, you always see the Fender 400 or the 1000 showing up.
Right.
Not a lot of guys grabbing them because you know that my job at Vintage Guitar Magazine is I put the guide together. So what I did is I went through because every other year we list the steels. This year, this goes to press. I think it's already gone to press. The 2026 book it should be available. You could get it. So I went ahead and I picked the top 10 most expensive vintage pedal steels. The reason I have to do this every 2 years is there's just no data. You know,
Oh yeah.
there's just no data. Like I get people sending me emails saying, "Hey, how much you have this in your book? It's way off." I'm like, "Well, what did you sell it for?
Hmm.
What did you buy it for?" Well, I bought it back in 1985. I'm like, well, I haven't seen one come up. Here are the most expensive vintage pedal steels you can buy right now in the book. This is it's coming out. You're getting this before the book actually even comes out.
I'm excited.
Number one, the highest price I could find was the Bigsby 888 string neck from 47 to 59. This is the one Bigsby made. One of a kind of each one. To get into one of those, you're going to be paying over $7,000.
Okay.
And these are vintage. These are old, 47. We already said that to buy a brand new Edmunds, you're going to pay about $10,000 anyway.
Right.
But if you're a vintage collector and you want this old Bigsby, it's going to cost you about 7 to 8, 9, almost $10,000.
Yep.
And then we talked about that Model A 22 frying pan steel from 34, 35. To get one now, I was talking to my buddies over at Retrofret. They sell them about 35 to 4, almost up to $5,000 now.
Whew.
Those are not cheap. Number 3 was the Showbud Super Pro from 77. To get a vintage one, that's going to cost you about $4,000. Do you think that's a good price? If somebody could find a Super Pro from the 70s?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
can get it for
I would say
4K?
so. I mean, I don't know exactly how much my Showbud cost whenever I got it because it was gifted to me. The
Mhm.
gentleman who gave it to me, it was a gift, and he never told me exactly how much he paid for it. But if I had to guess, I think it was somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000, and that was in 2016.
Yep. And then comes next is an Emmons double 10 steel from 1970-ish with the push-pull pedals.
Hmm.
That's about 35. And then the next one is Emmons Lashley Legrand 3 steel.
Yeah, yeah, those are good ones.
2000-ish. I guess those came out in the 2000s. The one that's from the 25th anniversary, that's a $3,500 to $4,500 vintage guitar. And then here's the old one. Here's her first one, the Gibson EH150, which was actually the lap steel E150 from 1936. First run, made out of metal. I think you can get one at Retrofret for about $3,500 to $4,000.
Yeah.
I don't know what you can do with it, but it looks cool. It looked cool on the wall. And then, of course, there are the Showbud Pro 3s, Pro 2s from the 70s. Those are up $3,500, over $3,000. The Rickenbacker Model Bs, the ones that we call the Penguins or the Pandas, those are $3,000 easy nowadays. What does Showbud stand for? I know the Bud is from Edmunds, but what's the show from?
So that is actually from Shot Jackson. So Shot Jackson and Buddy Emmons were the ones who came together and started that company. So you had Show from Shot was his first name, and then Bud from Emmons. So you had Showbud from those two.
Okay.
And so they started building guitars, I think, in Madison, Tennessee, and then eventually they came down and where Robert's Western World is on Broadway. If anybody's ever been to that bar, that actually, I believe, used to be where Showbud manufactured their pedal steels for a long time.
Well, I remember if you stand in the alley behind the Ryman Theater there, it's still painted on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's like right there. And then the first Groon, well, one of the first Groons building still, last time I was in Nashville, still had the painting on the side of the wall, said Groons Guitars on Broadway.
Yeah.
But I remember looking up and seeing the Showbud painting. I was like, oh my God, that was it right there. It was right across the street it was right across the alley from the Ryman Theater.
Yep. Yeah, I can't recall, what years they were there from to when, but the Showbud that I have has the Nashville, Tennessee listing under it, and I'm thinking that it was built right there where Roberts is now. So I'm thinking that it's not too far from where it was built.
Right. So Showbuds from the 70s, they're gonna $3,000 is probably what you're gonna pay for a vintage. The Fender String Masters from the 50s, those are 2.5, and then things just fall from there. Everything is about 150 or 1500, when you get down to the other consoles. What's interesting is if you wanted, like, let's say you were a big Fender historian and you wanted to buy a K&F steel. Do you know how much it would cost you to buy a K&F, like an original K&F lap steel from 1940?
Oh, I wouldn't have any idea.
I would think these things go for big bucks. No, for about 1,200, 1,500, up to about $4,000, like one sold for 4,000. But it's weird because they really aren't usable. You know what I mean?
You're right.
You're not going to be making a lot of music with them, but they sure look cool hanging on the wall, right?
Yeah. It's one of those cool things to have.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's quite a few things out there I got in the book for $1,000. I think the cheapest, the cheap stuff is when you get down into the 500s for like the Oahu's and the Supros and all that stuff. But those are great. I mean, if you want to just, I don't know, don't think everybody should have a lap steel just to sit around and just play around with it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's not quite as heavy and won't take up as much room. That is one of the downfalls when you start getting a lot of pedal steels. You start running out of room in your house very quickly whenever you've got them all set up.
How many do you have set up right now in your house?
So right now I only have 2 that are actually set up. I've got 3 that are in cases, and I try to do a good job of rotating them in and out, but at any given time, I might have, 3 or 4 sitting up. And whenever that happens, it gets very crowded in here. I remember because I've got the red one and I've got the blue one and the green one. And I think last year, whenever my wife Amanda was decorating for Christmas, I actually went out and tried to set the steel guitars up around the trees for decoration. But she didn't go for that very well. But
I love watching your wife on the. And, I can beat her sometimes when, you do the quiz. Most of the time you're doing a quiz, like, okay, what song is this? Once in a while I can beat her, but she's pretty quick. She knows knows her country music.
She knows a lot of country music. I mean, we met at the Opry. That's where she was working in the gift shop whenever I was there working as a tour guide. And so we both grew up with a deep love of country music. And that's kind of where we bonded over, and most of the time she does well. There are some times where she'll be like, I don't know what these are, so you're going to have to help me out at least for 2 of them so I don't look really stupid on the internet.
Well, we got a little bit of time left. I told you on the phone the other day, I'm going to give you a quiz. You always give quizzes, and this one is for you.
All right, let's see how I do.
Well, just guitar quiz, the country guitar stuff. And I'm going to see how I do. You probably get most of these. I researched the hell out of this stuff, and I was wrong. I thought I knew the answers, and I was wrong about some of them. So, okay.
Oh, no, that means I might not do too good.
No, you'll tell me the answer that's the accepted answer, and I'll be able to caveat it. So let's start with the easy one. 1959, this instrumental introduced most people to the lap steel on rock and roll radio. What was the song in 1959 that most people heard their very first lap steel on?
In 1959, I mean, was that Sleepwalk?
That was Sleepwalk. That's where most of us heard.
Yeah, it was Santo and Johnny. It amazes me how many people always ask me. I'll get requests for that song more than any other.
Right. And that's just a regular old lap steel, right? There's nothing fancy going on there. I don't think he's using a pedal steel, is he?
No. That was just lap steel. Because I will get called out by people, and rightfully so, because when I play it, I use pedals. And so I'll get people to go, well, when he played it, he didn't need any pedals.
I remember listening to that on the radio, not knowing that he was actually using a lap steel. I thought, who knows? I didn't know what I thought he was using, but it was very emotional.
Yeah.
All right, here's number 2. Who wrote Heartbreak Hotel?
By Elvis
Yeah.
Presley. Oh my gosh. See, when you say Heartbreak Hotel, the first thing I thought of was Floyd Kramer, who I think played piano on it.
Yeah.
I don't think I know who wrote it.
It was Hoyt Axton's mother.
Really?
Hoyt Axton's mother wrote that song, and she handed it to Elvis, and in order to get him to do it, she gave him writing credit on it. So there's only 8 songs that Elvis has writing credit on, and it's mainly because the songwriter wanted him to sing the songs they gave him.
Exactly.
But that was Hoyt Axton's mother. Yeah, and I think that was his first number 1.
That was Elvis's first Billboard, I think. Yeah, back in like '56 or something like that.
But it was Hoyt Axton's mom. Yeah. Okay, now here's one for you. This is a country song. This is a country. What was the first song to use fuzz? Fuzz on a guitar.
Fuzz on a guitar.
Distortion.
By thinking about it, I would want to say it was something in like, what year was it?
1960, Nashville.
Oh my gosh.
This is credited as being the first recorded fuzz guitar solo, and it's on a country song.
Was it Grady Martin who played it?
Yes, Grady Martin.
Oh gosh.
6-string bass.
Was it Don't Worry?
That's it.
By Marty Robbins, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't like something happened where they had a transformer on the mixing console.
Yep.
At Quonset Hut Studios. Something happened, and Grady Martin played this thing, and he's like, "Oh my God, we got to change." And somebody said, "No, leave that in," and that became the first. That was the first hit record to use fuzz.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Quonset Hut is such an interesting and fun studio because Belmont owns it now, where I went to school, and I remember nobody ever wanted to record there because they thought it was so boring. Because it's just a room until you realize how much history is in that room.
Oh, yeah, how many songs are in there? And it's funny because, as far as pedal, that was that fuzz came from the board. But the very first accredited pedal fuzz was 1960, a song called Go On Home by Sanford Clark, followed really closely by the 2,000-pound bee by the Ventures, where they used Nokia Edwards used a prototype snotty fuzz pedal. A lot of people always say, the first distortion was 2,000-pound bee, but nope, we know it as the Don't Worry by Marty Robbins.
Great vocalist. I love Marty Robbins.
Yeah, he was from Phoenix. He's a Phoenix guy.
Yeah, so good.
So, and then there's also like a pre-distortion. Sometimes they link Ray. They'll say, because he poked a hole in his speaker to give him that rumble sound.
Right.
But it was more of a tube overdrive. It wasn't really a transistor-based fuzz tone. So when we say fuzz, but I guess distortion, you could say Link Ray, but fuzz, Robbins track remains it. Okay, here's one. I don't know. This you might get this one. You know how Peter Frampton did that, talk box with Do You Feel Like I Feel?
Yes, I do.
Okay. This device was invented and used on a country record. What song used the talk box first?
Oh gosh, used the talk box. So the history that I know with the talk box is that there's actually a whole steel guitar album that Pete Drake did using one.
Yes.
And it was called the Talking Steel Guitar. I actually have this on vinyl, but I don't know if that was the first one that ever used it.
Yes, hot. You're there. Yep, that's it. It was a song called Forever in 1964, and he used the pedal. He was pedal steel, but he was working with Bill West, and they built this tube that, basically it was a vocal track to mimic human speech. And this thing, believe it or not, that very same device was just kind of hanging around. Joe Walsh took that very device and used it on Rocky Mountain Way, the same exact device that was used on Forever.
Really? I didn't realize it was the same one.
Yeah. And then, after Frampton, everybody wanted to do that,
Yeah, super cool.
So I don't know. I always thought that was cool that Pete Drake on a Forever, which was a country record, and he's using the fuzz box. And you just got to Google it, and you'll see what I mean. All right, the wah-wah pedal. Now, what was the first appearance on a commercial record by the wah-wah pedal?
First commercial appearance for a wah. Surely this wasn't in country music, was it?
It was Del Casher.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I know.
It's an obscure track. It was the soundtrack to the Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
Really? With Don Knotts. You
Yeah.
know,
And then he did the shakiest gun in the
yeah,
West.
I love that movie.
Yeah, so that's one of the earliest accredited use of a wah-wah pedal, Dal Casher. He invented it. The earliest band that's accredited was a band called The Plague, and it was called R&B. You can't find that record. I looked all over for that record because I was going to try to, I wanted to hear it, but I couldn't. You can hear the Ghost and Mr. Chicken. You'll hear the wah 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 in the back. Now here's one that most people get right and most people get wrong. They get it right by accident. Okay, what's the earliest record to feature a Fender Telecaster?
Oh,
First, originally, that was actually recorded commercial record that uses a Fender Telecaster.
uh, gosh, was this in the 50s? It had to have been in the 50s, right?
1950. Yeah.
Uh, that wasn't the Speedy West thing, was it?
Okay, everybody says it's the Jimmy Bryant with Speedy West 1950 Stratosphere Boogie.
Right.
But I have found, I doing my research, that somebody actually used a broadcaster on a live record, or on a recorded record. It was Les Paul. His buddy Leo Fender handed him the broadcaster. He used it on How High the Moon a few weeks before the Speedy West recording.
How about that?
So How High the Moon is actually the very first, what they say, use of a Telecaster on a record. And very interesting, believe it or not, How High the Moon also is the first one to use the Les Paul solid body, because then Les Paul used the gold top that he was just given to do the overdubs.
Oh yeah.
For How High the Moon. So 1951 or 50, whatever, How High the Moon was recorded. It's the first song to feature the broadcaster and the Les Paul. Kind of weird.
Wow.
Kind of weird.
Yeah.
Bill Carson's also got some swing records. They say, there were pilots that were used, some like Tennessee Saturday Night by Red Foley, supposedly had a very, very early Telecaster on it. I don't know, but most people say Speedy West and Jimmy Bryant. And that's kind of the right answer because that was the most recognized one. But actually, it turns out that Les Paul actually used it a couple of days, weeks earlier. So
Yeah, sometimes the history we know is not always right.
yeah, yeah. Now here's one that this one actually kind of cool. The first record to feature a Fender Stratocaster.
Feature a Strat. I don't think I would know that.
Most people will say it's Pee Wee Crayton, Do Unto Others.
Do Unto Others, yeah.
But I found, because I dig, that there's a little bit of people now are also saying that Elvis, when he recorded I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone, that Scotty Moore played a 54 Telecaster purchased specifically for the session.
Really?
So some people are saying that, because if you listen to that song, it's definitely a Strat. It's not that the 295 that he always played. So some people say that the first Stratocaster on a commercial record was I'm Left, You're Right, She's Gone by Elvis Presley. But
yeah.
A lot of other people say it was P.E. Crayton, Do Unto Others. So I don't know.
Okay.
It could be either or. So that's just kind of, and now here's one. This is just kind of a aside, just because I was digging. The first record to feature a ES 355 or 335. The first record to feature a Gibson ES 335. This one's kind of easy, but maybe not.
Well, let's see. I mean, now since you said it's easy, I'm going to assume it's like a signature lick, and so was it Johnny B. Good?
No, but it's Chuck Berry, but it was Back in the USA.
Ah, okay.
He recorded that one before Johnny. So Back in the USA by Chuck Berry was the first known 335 to be recorded on a record. And here's just because I'm doing it, and what was the first record to feature a Gibson SG?
A Gibson SG. See, every time that I see or think Gibson SG, I always think of AC/DC, and I'm sure that there had to be something way before AC/DC came out.
Yep. 1961.
Oh gosh. Oh, was it? Oh, I don't know. What?
It was the Connie Francis "Don't Break the Heart That Loves You." It was released in '62, but the track is Al Caliola playing a Gibson SG Standard.
How about it?
Okay, here's one. Let's close it up with this. Elmore James, everybody knows he played slide guitar on records, But what was the first rock and roll record to feature a slide guitar solo?
The first rock and roll record?
Yeah, legitimate rock and roll record. Not an R&B, not blues, or an actual rock and roll band actually played a slide solo.
Oh gosh. I don't think I'm going to know this one either.
Brian Jones, I Want to Be Your Man by the Rolling Stones.
Really? That was the first time that I guess for a band. See, because when I'm thinking slide guitar, I'm always going to go back to like the 40s and early blues stuff.
Yeah, no, there's.
But I guess that's not a rock band.
I was going to say like rock. That's why I said rock and roll. Yeah, because Elmore James was playing slide solos, but yeah, that song was written by the Beatles. It was given to the Rolling Stones, so I guess the Rolling Stones recorded it. Everybody likes "I Want to Be Your Man" better, I think, by the Beatles. But if you listen to the Stones version, 1963, Brian Jones plays a slide using a bottleneck on his Vox teardrop, and that is accredited being the very first slide guitar solo on a rock and roll record.
All right.
I gave you a little quiz, and you did pretty good.
Well, I guess Amanda gets all the payback because I didn't do so hot on this one.
She would have known. I bet she would have known a few of these, but I don't know. Well, anyways, I took enough of your time. I didn't realize we've been doing this for over an hour.
No problem.
But I just wanted to thank you. Like I said, I was mesmerized watching your videos. I watch them every time they pop up. I don't scroll out, and I enjoy the heck out of them. And I'm glad to see pedal steel guitar making a big comeback. You're kind of at the point on that, right? You're the point man, pushing it through.
Yeah, for some reason, it's just kind of fell into my lap, but I'm very fortunate and very grateful for it.
I love your stuff. I want everybody to go check it out. They probably get them anyway. They probably don't know that's you, but now they do. Anyways, I can't thank you enough. This was a lot of fun. We'll keep in touch. If I'm in Nashville, I'll call you up.
Yeah, just come on down anytime.
Well, you have a good rest of the day. Give your best to your wife, Amanda, for me. And see you guys later.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Buy That Guitar, presented by Vintage Guitar Magazine. Please support VG for all they do for guitar players like us. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment on this podcast. I'd love to hear from you at ram@vintageguitar.com. See you again next week. Bye-bye.
The official Vintage Guitar Magazine price guide has partnered with 33 of the top guitar dealers in the industry to provide the most accurate values for thousands of models. This includes electric guitars, acoustic guitars, basses, amplifiers, effects, mandolins, and banjos. Whether your instrument is an investment or simply a piece you enjoy playing, it's always helpful to know what it's worth. If you're checking out a guitar at your local shop and want to know its value before making the purchase, this guide is your go-to source for all the details. Available in both print and digital editions, you can have the guide right at your fingertips no matter where you go.